What if the events shaping northern Nigeria today were set in motion centuries before colonial borders even existed? Welcome to the Calabash Diaries. Today we uncover the extraordinary and lesser-known origins of the Fulani people, tracing their journey from ancient West Africa into present-day Nigeria, and revealing how centuries of migration, culture, and shifting environments shaped their modern reality. To understand the Fulani, we must travel far beyond Nigeria, back to Futa Toro, Senegal, and the Senegal River Basin, around 1,000 years ago. The earliest Fulani were not purely pastoralists. Archaeological evidence shows they may have descended from a blend of Berber North Africans, local Senegambian communities, and early Sahelian agro-pastoralists. Some scholars link Fulani physical features, tall statures, narrow noses, to centuries of intermixing along ancient trans-Saharan trade paths, not a single origin point. Fulani oral tradition speaks of polar ancestors who came from the place of the setting sun, suggesting west to east migration long before written history. They were cattle keepers, poets, musicians, and early traders. They spoke Pular/Fulfulde, a language that would eventually spread across 20 nations. Between the 11th and 14th centuries, the Fulani initiated a gradual eastward migration, driven by climate shifts and changes in grazing patterns. Climate change in the medieval Sahel played a huge role. The drying of grasslands forced many Fulani clans to move toward greener pastures. They were the first pastoral group to map seasonal grazing cycles in West Africa, creating ancient routes still followed today. Fulani clans migrated in waves, not all at once. Each clan had a dialdo, a migration leader who read stars, winds, and animal behaviors to determine new routes. By the 1400s, Fulani communities were entering the regions that would later become Katsina, Kano, Sokoto, and Adamawa, but they didn't invade. They integrated slowly and peacefully. The Fulani didn't just pass through northern Nigeria, they became part of it. Rarely known facts. Many Fulani settled and married into Hausa families, creating centuries-long cultural fusion known today as Hausa Fulani. Fulani scholars brought new Islamic scholarship, transforming education in Hausaland. Pastoralists created early milk markets that became crucial to the Hausa urban economy. Some ancient Hausa kingdoms offered the Fulani extensive grazing corridors as diplomatic alliances. In architecture, Fulani tent culture blended with Hausa mud brick settlements. Food blended. Fura da nono became a staple in Hausa markets. Language also blended. Fulfulde loanwords entered Hausa vocabulary. This peaceful coexistence would shape the region for centuries. By the 1700s, the Fulani were respected scholars, traders, and pastoralists across Hausaland. Then came Usman Danfodio, a Fulani scholar from Gobir. Danfodio's movement began as an educational reform, not a military conquest. Many Hausa rulers initially supported him because he promoted literacy and moral discipline. Women were central to the movement. Danfodio's daughter, Nana Asma'u, became a scholar whose educational systems still influence northern Nigeria today. The Sokoto Caliphate became the largest pre-colonial empire in West Africa, ruled through Islamic governance, but heavily incorporated Hausa administrative structures. Pastoral routes were protected by law, one of Africa's earliest pastoral legal frameworks. To understand the modern issues associated with a minority of Fulani-connected groups, we must look far beyond the present. The roots lie in centuries of environmental change, colonial disruptions, weakened traditional systems, and shifting regional power structures. For over 1,000 years, Fulani clans followed well-established grazing corridors, stretching from Senegal to Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad. These roots were protected by local treaties, traditional rulers, and seasonal agreements between farmers and herders. But colonial rule shattered this system. European borders, drawn 1884 to 1914, cut migration routes in half. Grazing corridors that once extended hundreds of kilometers were suddenly blocked by borders or farmland. Pastoralists were pushed into tighter spaces, creating forced competition where none existed. Many Fulani communities still see themselves as people without borders, and this creates tension with modern state systems. Between the 1960s and 1980s, the Sahel experienced one of the worst drought periods in African history. Over 70% of grazing pasture vanished in some regions. Rivers that Fulani clans have used for centuries have shrunk by more than half. Tens of thousands of cattle died, devastating pastoral livelihoods. Many Fulani families lost everything and migrated south into Nigeria. This southward pressure intensified conflict along the Middle Belt, where farmland and grazing land overlap. For centuries, Fulani society revolved around Polaku, a moral code emphasizing self-control, patience, respect, honesty, and non-aggression. Youth were mentored by elders, clan leaders, and pastoral chiefs called Ardos, but in the last 40 years, urbanization pulled youths away from pastoral mentorship. Elders lost influence because many could no longer protect grazing rights, and poverty made youths more vulnerable to recruitment by criminal groups. Without elders guiding them, a tiny fraction of Fulani youth drifted into survival-based crime, something unimaginable under full traditional Polaku discipline. Many modern bandit gangs in Nigeria are not purely Fulani. They include unemployed youth from multiple northern ethnic groups, ex-security personnel, smugglers, and political thugs. But because some gangs operate in rural areas where Fulani herders live, the entire ethnic group often gets blamed. Criminal groups exploited Fulani challenges by offering money, weapons for protection, using them as guides through forests, and disguising themselves as herders to escape detection. This framing created stereotypes that do not reflect the majority of the Fulani population. Most of the banditry began in forest ecosystems, such as Zamfara forests, Kamuku Forest, Birnin Gwari Forest, Kainji Reserve, and Katsina woodlands. These regions became safe havens for gold smugglers, illegal miners, arms traffickers, and political militias. Because Fulani herders often grazed near these forests, they were usually the first victims and the first to be blamed. Many Fulani communities have had cattle stolen, families attacked, and villages burned by these same criminal gangs. But the media often portrayed the violence as Fulani attacks, even when evidence suggested multi-ethnic criminal operations. This part of the story is rarely told with nuance. When drought, border disruptions, and shrinking grazing land destroyed livelihoods, some young herders lost their cattle, lost their identity, their role in society, access to traditional pastoral training, and lacked access to modern schools. When youth feel rejected by both traditional and modern systems, criminal recruiters move in. Many joined bandit groups not out of ideology, but poverty, despair, broken family structure, revenge for cattle theft, and manipulation by organized criminals. This is a social collapse, not an ethnic trait. The majority of Fulani remain peaceful herders, scholars, traders, farmers, and community members. The modern issue is rooted in environmental pressure, loss of historical grazing rights, weakening of leadership, poverty, terrorism spillover from the Sahel, and criminal opportunism. Ethnicity alone cannot explain the crisis. History and environment also play a role. This deeper historical understanding reveals that modern challenges connected to some Fulani groups are not born from Fulani culture, but from a perfect storm of disrupted migration patterns, shrinking resources, weakened leadership structures, and criminal opportunism. To fix the present, Nigeria must understand the past. Solutions lie in understanding history, and there are cultural truths we must respect. Fulani pastoralism is one of Africa's oldest surviving cultural systems, and traditional Fulani codes, Pulaku, emphasize patience, respect, honesty, and self-control. Real solutions include restoring grazing corridors used for centuries and education programs that reconnect Fulani youth with pastoral heritage, community collaboration between farmers and herders, traditional Fulani leadership councils that help to guide youth away from crime, and government programs to protect ancient migratory routes. The Fulani story is not just a story of violence, it is a story of migration, resilience, cultural preservation, and adaptation. To build peace, we must look not at ethnicity, but at history, environment, and community. Only then can Nigeria restore harmony between ancient paths and modern realities. This is not just a crisis, it's a crossroads, and history is watching. Thanks for watching and liking this video. Until next time, remember, peace is like water. Everyone needs it.